first time doing this, already screwed up, forgot to hit record. So I started recording in the middle of your first question. So,
no worries.
So for anyone watching the replay, hello again. I'm Evelyn Jerome-Alexander with Magellan College Counseling. I'm interviewing Jake Adams with Pch Tutors, and you just missed the very beginning of his answer about AP exams.
Takeaway, it's much shorter. It covers less material this year. It's obviously online. That's one of the provisions that they've made, and there isn't like a crazy, lockdown of the browser, but it is taking place nationwide at the same time, regardless of time zone. That's to prevent cheating and make sure that, it's administered in a fair way. One of the things that really stands out to me about the APs this year is that it's one of the few opportunities that we have left as a guaranteed opportunity to demonstrate college readiness, especially in this situation that we're in, where we don't know if the next ACT or SAT is going to be canceled. We do know for sure that the AP exams will go off in May, at the scheduled times. There's also a makeup opportunity in June. For whatever reason, if you have, internet outages or something happens in the middle of your exam, there are opportunities to retake in June. If you get an AP ticket and you're able to take the test right away, that's great. But if you, for whatever reason on the test day, don't enter your AP ticket, you will automatically get a June, opportunity to take that test. But they recommend that you take the first available test.
But what you just said brings up a really interesting point. So talk to us a little bit about how the College Board is preventing cheating. I understand that everybody, not just in the country, but in the world, will be taking the AP exams on at the exact same time. But if you're telling me that you don't enter your ticket number and you get to take it in June instead, what's to stop a June test taker from learning from the May test takers what was asked?
Yeah, so I'm actually not certain if they're going to have a separate version of the test for the June test date, but I do know in either case for each test, what we're looking at is the sort of a revision of the way that the AP test will be graded. You're still going to score, from 1 to 5, but the way that points are going to be calculated for your responses are going to be different. It's not just going to be about, definitions or do I know the formula. It's going to require a lot of explanation in your thought processes. Points are being awarded based on how you got to your answer and how you reasoned through your response. And that's not something that you can easily replicate between two students. If two students come to the exact same conclusion in the exact same way, that's an automatic red flag that they were collaborating, and they're going to be flagged for cheating. And they might even actually lose the opportunity to take the ACT or SAT if they do cheat in that way.
Wow. So, so specifically, no multiple choice questions.
There are no multiple choice questions. It will be all free response. For myself included, that was part of, one of the hardest parts of the test is you have this question, you stare at it and you're like, what does it mean? And then after you do that, you have to figure out, okay, what's the plan? How do I get this done in the next 15 minutes? And that's going to be the hardest part about this new version of the exam is you don't have the multiple choice to save you if you, aren't as good at free response. You have to get good at free response.
So don't you think, I feel like a lot of the discussion about testing in college admissions is about bias. And I feel like you could easily make the argument that they've made this exam more biased against kids who aren't really good writers. Like if you're really good at memorization, you can sort of blow through that multiple choice section, even if your writing isn't fabulous.
True. Yeah. It is in some ways more biased against people who aren't good at writing. But I feel like, those people may not gravitate towards the more writing heavy tests. If you're looking at your STEM courses, those are relatively the same. Math is still math. Statistics is still statistics. You're looking at something that is, for the things that don't require a lot of writing, that's pretty much the same. And then for those courses that do require a lot of writing, they've always required a lot of writing. So I can't say that I really feel like it's biased any more than it is in a different year.
How do you, so juniors are probably the class that's the most impacted by the situation we're going through, and they're probably the most freaked out about
Yes.
what's going on. So juniors generally take AP US History, AP English, maybe APES, maybe AP Chemistry, some of them AP Calculus. How do you recommend preparing for the exams that juniors could be taking this year?
One of the best ways to prepare right now is going to be to take the recommendations given by the College Board on what are the corresponding, question types that are going to be on your specific exam. We actually put a lot of work into that this week. We've prepared downloads for everyone who's watching. If you were to go to our blog, we have a downloadable study guide for each specific test. And it tells you, okay, this year's question 1 from the AP Literature exam is going to be very similar to FRQ number 3, 4, whatever it is, whatever test you're looking at. We're telling students, the pre-response question to look at from past tests and to test in a similar way to, or test yourself in a similar way to what you will be tested on when it comes time for the actual AP exam, doing that under a time setting. And then also, either getting your current instructor on board with helping you to grade those responses, because, you have to have a lot of knowledge about the subject to be able to give a good, idea of whether or not you're going to earn a 3, 4, or 5 on the response that you just gave. Also, working with a tutor is a great way to do that if your instructor just doesn't have the bandwidth to help you with something like that.
Right. What about the content? Most high school kids have lost at least 5 weeks worth of content at this point. How do you make up for that? And also, we're basically 2 to 3 weeks away from the AP exams. What would your 2 or 3 week study plan be?
The 2 or 3 week study plan that you can develop is going to depend on each course. The College Board has tried to be mindful of the fact that everyone's kind of in a different place. Some of my students, they've actually completed the full AP coursework. Other people are behind. So they've actually shortened the test significantly, and they give you the exact sections that your specific subject will be covering. That's available on the College Board website or through the study guides that we put together. But in studying for that, it would be, a good thing to do would be to look at the specific units. The AP coursework is broken into like unit specific work, and they're telling you which units will be covered on the test. So focus on those units that they are saying will be on the test. That's your best plan, and working backwards from the test day. In the same way that I tell test prep students, like, take your test day, work backwards and figure out how do I work through the material in a systematic way and slot out time each day to cover things. That's going to be, one of the key things that you have to do is look at your particular test date. It's going to be different for the different subjects that you're looking at. There's not one date, and I can't tell you, each person how to put together their study plan, but take your test date and work backwards and make sure you cover every unit covered on the test.
Right, which as you said is listed on the College Board's website.
Yeah.
I've sent this out to my students. The College Board is actually running daily AP lectures and study sessions on YouTube, live on YouTube.
Yeah.
Have you been using those?
Yeah, so that's a great resource. It's going to be taught by AP approved teachers. They're going to have review sessions available as well. That's going to help with the studying portion of it, but in terms of the actual practicing with the testing, you're going to want to look at your practice tests from the past and take practice questions from there and work through those questions and see if you can get all the way through all the answers that they're asked, or all the questions that they're asking, and then also practice. So the reality is, on the test, maybe you don't understand how to do part A or part B. You have to be able to work around the fact that you don't understand part A and part B and know how to work with the rest of the question, because you can still pick up enough points to earn a 3 or a 4, even if you don't know all of the answers to every single part of the question.
Now, did you say that the test will be scored differently this year?
Yes, it will be scored differently. It is more based on how you get to your answers, and they want to see your reasoning and capability to work with complex concepts. They don't just want to know, what is the definition of this, or, something that's easily to look up, because this is an open note test, right? If you can easily look at your notes and say, I know the definition to this, or I know how to quickly use this formula, that's probably not something that the AP test is going to give you points for. That's like the baseline of what you need to do to start solving a problem.
Right. So do you think we'll see scores skewed higher this year? Or do we just not know?
I would say that I don't really know. I feel it's not graded on a curve. The AP score is not on a curve. It's awarded based on scoring guidelines that they've developed. There's scoring guidelines on College Board for this year's test.
Right.
They give recommendations on what you should know and how to give your answer. Right. And that will of course be a little bit different from years past. So reviewing that's going to be a key part for each subject, knowing what you should do to practice. But I don't think that you're going to look, at this year's tests and say like, oh, more people got higher grades because they had open notes. I think that you'll see probably the same distribution if the College Board does follow through with its grading practices.
Got it. Okay. Anything else people should know specifically about APs?
Other than this is a really good opportunity, don't pass it up. I know a lot of people would have had to already register for these exams, but if you were thinking about not taking the exam, it's really not something you want to pass up, because this is a unique opportunity.
Really I've said that to a lot of clients. What a great year to be taking AP Chemistry or AP Calc. Take it.
Yeah.
Take it. What's the worst that can happen? If you get, look, you guys, AP scores are not an important part of the admission process. If you get great scores, we send them. They make you look good. You're a rock star. If we don't get good scores, then guess what? We don't tell anybody. We send them after you enroll for you to get college credit, but you don't have to let the admissions folks know if you got a 3. It's totally fine. And a 3 is fine, by the way. It will get you credit down the road. The other thing that I wanted to say was we spend a lot of time talking to college admissions folks, and nobody has said they won't be taking scores. Everybody is saying they will give the same full credit for 3s, 4s, and 5s that they always have. Yeah. So really great opportunity, as Jake said. And as you said at the very beginning, it's a real concrete opportunity to show not only college readiness, but mastery of certain subjects, and just sort of put a cap on, put a lid on your choosing to take the rigorous courses. If you're signed up for the AP exam, there's literally no downside in taking it.
Yeah.
So let's transition really quickly to SAT and ACT.
Okay.
I feel like we're living in a room full of falling dominoes. So none of us really know how this, party is going to end. But talk to us a little bit about what you do know about the SAT and ACT. I'll talk with Libby in a couple weeks about the test optional phenomenon. Who should still be taking the SAT and ACT? Is it conceivable that kids should opt out of preparing for the SAT and ACT?
Yeah, that is a tricky question in the sense that it's really going to depend on each student in their unique position. But as far as what I know for the ACT, that is still a test date that's available in June. The SAT is already canceled its June test date, which most people already know. And if you want my personal opinion, I do think that the ACT in June is going to be canceled as well. I just can't see them working that out, given that there's a lot of other things that have already been canceled. I am hopeful for the July ACT test date that they have. And then I do think that you're going to look at the ACT and the SAT offering tests every single month in the months of August, September. Like they haven't come out with anything official, but I think that you're going to see an increased number of opportunities to take those tests in some random world where we can't do, well, maybe I shouldn't say random world. It's a possibility where we can't take those tests. They've also mentioned the opportunity to take those tests online. They haven't come through with a clear solution or explanation of how they would do that. But, you know, there's probably going to be an opportunity to take those tests. So it's still, if you're, you know, a student who's getting, you know, fairly good grades, but you're applying to more selective colleges and you need an extra way to prove your competencies beyond what your grades are showing, you know, being able to take that test is something that you would want to take advantage of that opportunity. And I personally think that if you, it's the question of taking the test isn't so much the question, it's whether or not you're going to submit those scores.
Right.
So like, I would say take the test as a safeguard to be able to have, you know, those scores in your back pocket and know if you're going to apply to a certain school, you can send those scores to that school, but maybe you're applying to a different school and you are in a different, you know, you're in a different category for candidacy. And so maybe it's more advantageous in that case to not submit a score. I think it's going to depend on what your situation is on a case-by-case basis.
So I had this conversation, and again, we'll delve much more deeply into this with Libby from the University of Rochester in a couple of weeks. But I had this conversation with a client yesterday. She has one ACT score. She's okay with it. She'd like it to be higher, but her list is still in formation. What I said was, let's kind of drill down on your list and let's see what's there, because if you know, in a normal year, the chances that your entire list would be test optional would be unusual, would be rare. But this year, it is possible that we have more test optional schools than not. So to me, whether or not to take an additional SAT or ACT once you've already taken one, to me is a function of kind of narrowing down your list. That said, if you didn't have the opportunity to take the SAT or ACT, you know, as of spring, and you have nada, I'm going to say, Jake, I agree with you. Again, there's no downside.
Yeah, and as far as those people that are considering prep and like how they're going to do that, if they're thinking of doing that, you know, with a tutor or through some program, what I've been telling people is that is an investment in terms of money and time. And so one of the things to be sure of is like try to, you know, spend a little bit more time waiting to figure out, is this a viable test date? Have public health officials said, you know, we're in, I wouldn't say the clear, but we're in a position to know that we can for sure take this test, and then, you know, work backwards the same way that you would work backwards from the AP test. You know, okay, this is the test date I'm taking. Let me work my study schedule backwards from that date.
Right. What would you say, or what did you say to your students who were prepped for the March SAT or the April ACT? That's so disappointing.
Yeah, it has been really disappointing. As far as, you know, the students that have already taken they were already, you know, just about to take the test. I've, you know, had them look at Khan Academy and, you know, worked with them on individualized homework plans to sort of keep that material fresh. I would say, like, don't completely like pack up and say like, okay, you know, I'm just going to take a vacation and I'll come back to this when we're ready to actually take the test. You need to keep up those skills. If you worked to improve your score, you know, you're going to need to find a way to keep moving forward, or at least maintaining what you had improved upon.
Right. I want to say final question, but it's not a final question. How do I know, you said you have some free materials up on your website to help people prep for the AP exams. How do I know, obviously that's a wonderful service. How do I know how do I know I'm hiring a good tutor? What questions should I be asking? I can tell people how to hire a good college counselor. I don't know how to tell them to hire a good tutor, how to hire a good tutor.
So in terms of hiring a good tutor for these materials, you want to look at someone who has subject specific knowledge. You don't necessarily want to go with, you know, the tutor that you know, and say like, okay, you know, because I know them, they're great. Maybe they can help me with physics, or they can help me with statistics. You would want to have a tutor who has already taken these classes in college, or has an area of expertise where they've been working on with this material a good deal. And you want to make sure that they have subject specific knowledge, rather than sort of a general, knowledge of, how to test. These are questions that, require a deep understanding of the material, and also specialized, in some cases, like specialized training. So like a lot of what the students are working on right now with their instructors, I'm sure their instructors are saying, okay, we're going to take this FRQ, we're going to time it, and I'm going to show you, there's 5 key things you need to do in setting up this question, and you need to be able to do it in 15 minutes. And so having, a tutor who is going to know how to structure the responses is really important. So ask a tutor, do you have practice with actually structuring, the responses to free response questions? And do you know, some methodologies or techniques for making sure that students can do that in a timely fashion? Because for students, they don't know what's going to be thrown at them, but they need to practice and have a structure and a plan for responding to those questions, so you can at least bring some order to the chaos.
So it sounds like the person you have prep you for the AP exams is a little bit different than the person you have prep you for SAT and ACT, because that's a lot about strategy, yes?
Yeah, so there is some strategy to the APS, because again, the scoring guidelines determine like how you're going to rack up points for an AP response.
Right.
So you do want to keep those things in mind, and there is a little bit of strategy, but it's paired with, a lot of knowledge. So you need to have the strategy locked in, as well as the knowledge component. And that's another thing, you want to have a tutor that has both. If you have a great, guy that who's a physics professional, but they haven't worked on the AP test in years, or have just completely forgot about that information and how to structure it, then they're not going to be a good tutor. But also, if you have a tutor who, says they can help you structure everything, but they don't have deep knowledge, they're not going to be a good tutor either. Here's in case you
have all of those tutors. And give us their website so we know where to get the downloads.
Yeah, that's pchtutors.com. And if you go to our blog section, we just put up an AP study materials post, and like how to prepare for the APs. You should be able to access the downloads there.
For our non-California folks, PCH is for Pacific Coast Highway, which is the highway that goes from Santa Monica to Malibu. Hence the surfboard and his logo. All right. Any final words of wisdom on testing?
I would say this: there are requirements in terms of like technical specifications and doing troubleshooting with the online test taking format. Do not skip the opportunity to do those things. College Board is going to give students the opportunity to log in, make sure that their hardware works, make sure that they know how to submit their answers. They're going to have to do that in a mandatory way, but there's a larger window of time to do that than just half an hour before the test. So I recommend doing it way before, practice it a couple times, get used to that format. And if you're taking a STEM class, I would recommend doing things by hand. You're gonna have probably an easier time handwriting your answers than trying to write technical math equations into some sort of word processor where you don't know what the right way to write it down is. So just do those things by hand.
Do it the way you're comfortable doing it, right? Do it the way you're comfortable.
And that would be another thing, like figure out what are you comfortable with? What's the way that you're going to take the test, and then practice that.
Practice, right? And practice. If you have 2 weeks or 3 weeks before your AP exams, look, just like he said, you know exactly what's on the test. I mean, I was laughing when you were talking, because when we were kids, we always used to say, will this be on the test? You know what will be on the test. They're literally telling you what's on the test. So follow their advice. Watch the YouTube videos. They're live every day, but after they go live, they post them right on their channel. So they're doing a great job of pushing out accurate information that you need if you're going to take an AP exam.
Definitely.
All right, I have no final words of wisdom on testing either. We will spend a significant amount of time talking about sort of the alternative viewpoint on SAT and ACT in a couple weeks. when I have Libby on. Thank you, Jake, so much for being my very first guest. Jake Adams with Pch Tutoring. I'm Evelyn Jerome-Alexander with Magellan College Counseling. Our website is magellancounseling.com. We have also tons and tons of information on our blog. We've also visited something like 400 colleges in the last 10 years, and we've done write-ups of many, many, many of them with photos. So I know that you wanted to spend your spring break visiting colleges. So did we. And our trip got canceled, and I know yours did too. So hopefully the information on our website will help a little bit. And I thank you for watching us live.